What's up, guys? Welcome back to Talkin Hawkins, our Stranger Things in review. Welcome to Project Potter. My name is Kyle, your host. Guys, we're here for season 3, episode 5, and let me just tell you that this show is starting to lose me a little bit, and I'm going to get into that in just a bit, guys. But if you haven't seen the series before, appreciate you guys stopping by. What we do is my favorite scenes or thoughts on the episode, my favorite character, which is our Hawkins hero, my least favorite character, which is our mouth breather, and a score out of 10, guys. So jumping into this episode, other than this gentleman over here that we got, this is just a messy episode, guys. I mean, we get the Hopper and Joyce who are trying to figure out who tracked them down, the guy on the bike. Joyce, of course, got a little bit of the nameplate or the license plate. I'm glad she didn't get the whole thing, because when that happened and she looked out there and they zoomed in on it, I was like, if she read that license plate from that far away, that's going to be some bullshit. But she only got like the first. She's like, oh, it's an 8 or P, and I'm like, okay, that's better. We do get Hopper and Joyce, and they go off against this Arnold Schwarzenegger knockoff, and the guy is like so much a clone of Arnold Schwarzenegger that it's like trying to be cool like that, and it's just not, and I just wasn't feeling it. They find a Smirnoff, as Hopper calls him, that down there where he's like working on one of the machines just randomly, and then one of the other guys is there, and he has like a quick fight. There is a really good tension scene with Hopper where he's got the gun to Schwarzenegger's head. We're just gonna call him Schwarzenegger for the point of this review. Like, don't move or I'm gonna put some daylight in you. And he's like, you won't shoot me because you're a cop and cops have rules. And he's like, you want to test that theory? And then they count down, and Hopper actually ends up shooting, and the guy just avoids it. And I was like, yeah, dude, Hopper doesn't give a shit. He'll shoot you right in the face or right in the back of the head, really. But that was just really messy, the way they like scramble. And then if they're like, oh, we're taking you. And it's like, okay, I guess it's leverage, but that's weird. I do really like when they go see Murray. I think that was great because Murray is just fantastic. And he's just like so weird. He's like, look up at the camera. And then he's like, not at the speaker. And it's like this recurring bit that people look at the speaker, which is funny. And then he like comes out with a shotgun and he calls him like Soviet scum. And he's like silence traitor. And it's just really funny. He's like, you brought an enemy of the state into my backyard and stuff like that. So I love how Murray's just like holed up there. And it's funny because we've seen him in like 3 total episodes now, I think. But like it just has this like aura about him where every time you see Murray, it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. So that part I really liked. But I mean, them escaping from Schwarzenegger, the car like blowing up because Alexei is like, stop. And he doesn't believe him, and the car blows up. And then they have to walk to the gas station, and then they take that guy's car where he's like, but it's like, again, it's so goofy. It's so weird because like Hopper's got like licorice in his mouth or whatever. And he's like, yep, sir, I'm going to have to take this from you. The one scene or the one line I did really laugh out loud at is when he tells him, it's this scene behind me, guy. He says like, I know he doesn't look like much, but he's like, that is one of the most dangerous men in the world. And he's like, yep, killed a whole bunch of babies. I was like, wow. And then Joyce comes out and she's like, oh yeah, Detective Byers. And she's like, oh yes, he forged many things. And then Hopper's like, murdered babies as well. And she's like, child murderer. That part was really funny. I really, really like that, especially with him like smiling, telling him that he like murdered babies and he doesn't understand it. I think that was really funny. But the rest of this episode, guys, is just a nightmare. And I don't even know, like the kids and the cast are great. And I love seeing the interactions and like how Mike and Lucas are at the vending machine and they're trying to like hit the vending machine. And then Elle does a little like wipes her nose and she like gives him a little power. And then Mike's like, oh, thanks. And Lucas is like, dude, that's your cue. And he's like, what cue? And he's like, oh my God, you're hopeless, dude. He's like, oh, do your species like M&Ms? And I like how they were like, you know, it's like teenage love where it's like, oh, we break up, we're good. We break up, we're good. It's like, it's back and forth. So that's fun. You know, Will gets his like neck thing and that's all like signs of the flay, I guess. But they go to Billy's house and they find out like what's going on there. Jonathan and Nancy again are just like, they don't feel like the same characters that they were in season 1. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, guys, but they face off against the Flayed, which are like just I don't really like the hive mind, like in like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where it's like characters we know and they're like, oh, but now they're zombie version. And I'm just like, but they're still kind of acting like they were. They're still kind of a dick before they were invaded. But Jonathan and Nancy are going off there. That's weird. But the Steve, Erica, Robin and Dustin they were in the elevator trapped for like 8 hours, which I'm like, wow, that's impressive. And then there's like a funny scene where Steve's peeing and she's like, can you redirect your stream? And I'm like, all right, kind of like potty humor, wasn't great. And then I'm like, how the hell are they going to get out of here? Because they think about climbing and they realize it's like 1,000,000 stories up. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way that they're going to climb there, especially because if someone uses the elevator, they're going to get squished. So that's not a good option. And then they're just kind of stuck. They say they can't get out without the key card. And so they're like, what are we going to do? And someone happens to come by and they open the door and they're hiding on top. And then they almost get caught because he's like, oh, does it smell like piss to you? And the guy's like, whatever, not really. And it's like, okay. But then they happen to use this jar, which Erica almost smashes open. And then she's like, oh, I'm going to drink it if it comes down to that or starving. And then we find out it's like this acid that burns through. But this jar, the container that's in, apparently is so strong that it like is able to hold up this door for just long enough so they cut through. And I was just like, it just seemed really like a little over the top. And then they get in the base and there's like guards everywhere, dude. Like the machine's there's armed guards at the top, there's a bunch of people walking through, and like these kids, 2 of which are in the Scoops Ahoy, are just not noticed, and they're sneaking around, and there's like a guy on the balcony, and like they do the old trick where some guy comes out of a locked door and then Steve's hand grabs it at the last second, but they have to like go right across the lobby to do that. And I was like, no one saw that. No one saw those kids, dude. That just went like, it's so weird. It doesn't make any sense. And it's just like took me out of the moment. And then they get in there and he's like, who are you? And it is funny because like Steve is like waiting there and he's like, after he closes the door and then he like doesn't move. His body language especially is funny. Dustin gives him shit about not being able to win a fight. And then Ben like speaks, she's like, tread lightly. She's like the silver cat. And the guy's like, what? And then Steve just beats the shit out of him. Doesn't alert any of the other guards, apparently. I don't know if those rooms are soundproof or what's going on, but he's like, oh, you finally want to fight. And then they go to see the machine, and then they find out that the machine is like opening the door, which is interesting. But again, they're just like right there. There are no security cameras or anything. Like no one notices that. They're just chilling in there. So I thought that was just really super convenient and really unrealistic. And like I was like, even if as soon as they got in there, I was like, even if they get in there somehow, there's no way that these kids are getting out of this base undetected. And so I'm just like, I don't know, man. It just, I don't mind things taking a little bit of a stretch, but like, especially in a sci-fi show, but I was just like, this is too much for me. And again, the Flayed like goops down, like we saw the dude with the rat dude where it like gets rid of the carcass and then it comes together. And then the creature at the very end is awesome, like straight up terrifying. And this is a different creature, I think, than the one that has the Flayed, and which is different from the Mind Flayer, which we saw. So it's like now there's different things, and it's like we're getting too many monsters, dude. I mean, that's kind of the episode. Okay, guys, my Hawkins hero for this one, dude, it's Murray Bauman by a mile. He's so great in this one, and he's only in for a little bit, but man, he's just so good every time he's on screen. And I love how he's like, again, hold up. I love how he comes out with the shotgun. I just love how he's like, silence you Soviet scum. And he's like, you traitor. And he's got this weird device that he made, which is just like a pole and like looks like a tape that's a fan that's taped up there with like wires, and he's like scanning it almost like a metal detector. And then he's like, watch it. And he's like, hey, he's like, who's the fugitive here? Whatever. It's really funny. And then I like how Joyce kind of like snaps back at him. And she's like, no, tell me why my magnets are not working. They're trying to figure it out. And Murray's like, whoa, dude. And he says like, don't take your lover's quarrel here. And I just love how Murray is always there with like the lover's quarrel, like Jonathan and Nancy was. So they're like, no, this is not a lover's quarrel. But yeah, Hopper, well, I'll get into that, guys. But like, yeah, I think Murray was awesome and he's hilarious. And I forget the actor's name, but I'll put it in here because he's just really, really great every time. And I think he plays a lot of comedies, but yeah, his character is just really enjoyable. And I think he was the best one. Okay, guys, my mouth breather for this one, it's got to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger knockoff. I'll put his real name in here. Or his character's name, I should say. Man, he's just so obviously a Schwarzenegger clone, and it's just really dumb to me, like, because it's like if you're gonna do something like that, get Schwarzenegger, or like get the real thing. Like, this is just a knockoff. This is like when you go to the grocery store, you don't get the Captain Crunch, you get the knockoff Captain Crunch, and it's like you get the off-brand, and this is off-brand Schwarzenegger. This is like off-brand Terminator, and it's just really weird because he's just walking around. He's got a limp and he's got the AK, and I'm like, all right, dude, like we get it. and then he walks the whole way. And apparently he's got a limp, but then he gets there later, but he just happens to go to the same gas station that they went at. And then he like beats up the cashier, and there's like no consequence for that. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. He's like, I'm not the cop. He's like, you talk to me now. It just was weird. And I'm like, I just don't care for this character, man. And just stop it. Okay, guys, that brings us to the score. This is a 6-8, and this show is losing me. And you know why the show is losing me? Or not even the show, because I love the cast so much. This season is losing me because, guys, Stranger Things got too mainstream in season 3. It got way too mainstream. It's like the magic of season 1 was like, first of all, obviously nobody knew what Stranger Things was. So they had the luxury of playing with house money, as they say, where they went in there and it wasn't popular, so they can kind of write their own story. But it was much more grounded there. And then they had some sci-fi elements. But I think because of the popularity here, it's like we're just having characters that are not acting like themselves. Like, again, Hopper just doesn't feel like Hopper in this season. They're pushing the Steve and Dustin thing, but keeping Dustin away from the crew for this long seems like it's actually a detriment to the story at this point. Steve is great, and I love Dustin's chemistry too, but like the scene in the railroad tracks last season was really nice because it was like this new bond, and now it seems like they're just kind of together to be together, and they still have a good chemistry, but it's kind of like waning on me. And then Nancy and Jonathan don't even feel like the same two people. They had that really, really like beautiful chemistry in season 1. And then like, all right, she went back to Steve, and we're like, oh man, I've talked about that, guys. It doesn't help that they made the characters just look different, where they're like, oh, got to give Nancy a new hairstyle. And it's like, got to make Jonathan look a little bit different too. And it's like, he's not as awkward as he was now. And I know he's got more comfortable with Nancy, obviously. So that makes sense. They did have a fight where she's like, I guess we just don't, I don't know if it was this episode or last episode, where she's like, I think it was last one, where she's like, I guess we just don't understand each other anymore. And he's like, I guess not. And I was like, no. But then I'm also like, these don't feel like the same characters. So it feels like everyone is just like a knockoff brand of who they were the first 2 seasons, except for the main group where it's like Lucas, Mike, not Dustin actually right now, Lucas, Mike, 11, Max, and Will a little bit, but I don't know, man. It just feels off. And I just, this episode, I just don't find myself really caring about Scoop Monster. I don't find myself caring about why they have Alexi. I don't find it realistic that Steve and Dustin and Robin and Erica, who's there, which is strange, even though she's a great character, there in the base. And I'm just like, you would have gotten caught. So that's taking me out of it. And there's just a lot of elements that are not meshing for me. And I hope it's a strong finish. But this episode in particular, I was just like, man, this is really falling apart. And even though I love the cast, the story is just really just like losing me. So that's why I'm giving it the score that I am. Okay, guys, that's another episode of Talkin Hawkins. Thanks for checking out Project Potter. Thanks for checking out the show. A few episodes left, guys. So we're getting towards the end. I hope it is a strong finish, but I was really excited for season 3 because the production value is higher and it looks great, but it's kind of lost a lot of that actually magic. And I didn't realize until rewatching, where I'm like, the first episode I think was excellent, but then since then it's like, oh, it's like I said, it's very mainstream now. It's like they needed to expand it to a bigger audience. It's disappointing because it doesn't feel quite like the same show, but I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to be excited for season 4. So I'm excited to see what they do with that. But yeah, I just feel like this is losing a little bit of its luster here. But either way, guys, appreciate you stopping by. And until next Sunday, guys, peace.